welcome everyone to another broadcast of The Soul of the Everyman on the Artist First Radio Network. All past broadcasts are podcasts. Find them at artistfirst.com. Please send your questions and comments to dj@artistfirst.com. Now, ladies and gentlemen, here they are, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
Thank you very much. I'm Michael Lyons.
Huh? And I'm Margaret.
My voice is awful tonight.
Okay. I think the allergies are hitting everyone.
Something bad is happening. But we're gonna power on through. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I feel like I'm whispering almost. But welcome again to the Soul of Every Man, where the points do not matter.
Alrighty. Didn't realize we were in a game show.
Isn't? Yeah, so weird. And tonight we're going to talk about suffering because it's been a while.
I'd say
it's been a while since we talked about suffering, but I think that we have a different angle on it, and a nice quote. And this is not ground that we have not covered before, to use a double negative. But it's well worth going over, often, because the mind is an incredible, powerful tool that nearly everyone has, and it is often subverted to feed the whims and the the idiosyncrasies of the ego. And one thing that the ego uses the mind for all the time, nearly every second of every day, if you're living in an unconscious way, is to tell it stories. And you say, my mind never tells me stories. Then you start making up a story about why your mind doesn't tell you stories. And if you attend to the voice in your head, which is telling you all about those people over there are out to get you, and what this guy's thinking in the car three aisles over, why he cut off this person, and what the people down the end of the aisle in Walmart are doing, and what they probably had for dinner, and you suddenly realize that not only is your mind actively telling you stories all the time, but it's so subtle that you almost accept it as default reality. And that's sort of the, it's sort of the insidiousness of the storytelling mind, is that you believe it sort of de facto, especially if you're operating from sort of an unconscious space. You see something, and you've been trained, or you've trained yourself, let's say you've been trained to infer, to kind of draw a conclusion from very little actual facts. The wonderful story of "Is that so?" can come in here maybe at some point. But that doesn't stop the mind at all. And it doesn't stop the ego from listening. From the smallest of sometimes imagined events, the mind will create a huge, four-act play. And all the characters that it can figure out are plugged in. They're all given roles, and they're all given lines to say and play. And the central character, amazingly, is you. Or rather, your ego. And so this is a lovely story because you are the main character. You're the hero or the villain. And everyone's thinking about you, and everybody's talking about you, and everyone's wondering what you want to do next and whether or not they can help you or hurt you. And it's very seductive, wouldn't you say, Mom?
Well, it's a habit form because when you think of it, the tendency is to want to experience what's going on around you, and you put it together in a story form. This is what happened, and this is the sequence that it happened, and all the other what, where, why, and how questions. And you realize at that point that it depends on the perspective when you're asking this question. Who is usually me?
Right.
What means, what is it doing to me?
Right.
Why is this happening to me?
Right.
And how is this affecting me?
A sense, a theme.
Yes. So when you realize that when it's related specifically to you, that's usually the first developmental stage. It's natural, because that's the way babies think. They don't necessarily think of, oh, gee, maybe if I start crying now, Mommy won't get any sleep. That never occurs to them. It's like, I have to cry now. I'm in distress. And that's what happens. That is the first stage. What you hope for is that you mature past that first stage, where the who is not you, the what is in relationship to something broader, something all-encompassing. Where is not just what happens to be around your feet, but out there you're maturing into understanding the different levels of the world that you can interact with. And hopefully you begin to push boundaries out to encompass much more than what your needs are, what your family needs are, but understanding the humanity, and then pass the humanity into the world. That's the where, the why. Why, instead of why me, it's like, why is this unfolding as it is? And frankly, I believe that's the basic tenet of a lot of scientific study. Why does this happen? And how does this happen? Again, basis of scientific study. So it is a natural process, but if you realize that if you're not taking steps outside your immediate vicinity, you are shortchanging your experience down here.
Well, I mean, let's back up a little bit. I think you're right. That would be great if people actually did that. But I think a large portion of people, especially if they're acting unconsciously, tell the story about themselves. And especially when, if you're being, let's say, mature or trying to be mature and dispassionate, and perhaps you have to be to accomplish a certain result, then perhaps you're not telling a story about you. But whenever anything happens, the habitual form, you mentioned that earlier, it's a habit form. The habitual form is to turn the story into something about me. You see, some event happens nearby you. Some person yells, or they're whispering, or there's just a little bit of emotional tension, and immediately the ego wants to hear, what are they saying about me? And why is that happening near me? And, what did I do to deserve this? I don't deserve it. So these sort of default, very close to the vest, sort of unconscious, childlike stories. I mean, you're absolutely right. This is where we begin with the infant and with the child, that it's all about me. But I think even though you may put, and you see this in people, they have their sort of veneers of sophistication that they put on themselves. But when the rubber hits the road, when something actually happens that sort of peels those layers off, it's all about me. And the story is immediately about, why is this happening to me? Why isn't it this one? Why, what what circumstance can be changed so that I'll be happy? It narrows down almost immediately because of this habitual, egoic, unconscious reaction. And when you have that, it's the story. It's the instantaneous sort of spin.
Well, if you think about it, it goes back to what Shakespeare had said, that all the world is a stage. And you realize that in your mind's eye, that's pretty much what you're doing, is telling yourself a story and seeing all the characters play through different roles. And you're sitting there watching it, which is probably why the Greek story of the shadow play hits so closely.
Plato's cave, yeah.
Yes, Plato's cave, where his portrayal of you as a person is that you're tied up in this cave and you're sitting just watching this blank wall, and there's light shining from behind, and then there are figures that are being projected, or shadows being projected on that wall, and that's what you're watching. When one of them escapes and manages to climb out of that cave, he finds a world that has sunshine and green grass, and I believe just on top of a hill, if I remember correctly.
Right.
And he wants to bring the rest of the people that were with him in that cave to this reality world, not the shadows that they see. But he found that the only way he can even begin to do that is by entering once again into that world of shadow play. So when you're only looking at these shadows, it always comes out as a story of some kind, good or bad. There's no life to it. You don't see the wholeness of existence. You don't feel the breeze. You don't see the sunshine. What you see is this black and white, some grays in between. And because, frankly, your soul is looking for more, it begins to embellish what it is that it begins to see. Because it's looking for more. Intuitively, you understand that there's so much more than what I'm actually seeing. So if you take that concept of realizing that there is much, much more to your existence than the byplay that you're telling yourself, it's the beginning of grasping into, wait a minute, there's more out there.
I think certainly that can happen, but largely people are happy with these stories, or rather, they're comfortable.
Comfortable, maybe.
They're comfortable. And
I'm sorry. Well, just that the Greek plays were always tragedies. Those are the ones they always remembered.
Everyone dies.
Yes, they were
Right.
tragedies. This is the stories they were telling themselves, tragedies.
Right.
Everybody died. You always had the Greek chorus in the back,
Right.
reiterating whatever the main character was going through.
Which is very similar to a lot of people's minds. And, but I don't want to go, but that's the reason those tragedies, those Greek plays were so popular and why Shakespeare was so popular is that it reflected, sort of the internal dialogue that many people have, that as he said presciently, that all the world is a stage and we are but players upon it, because that's how people often see the world. And the insight, the insight we haven't got to yet, but we're going to in a moment here, the insight is that all this storytelling, especially egoic, self-referential storytelling, leads to a lot of the suffering in the world. Maybe we'll say our wonderful quote by Tolle, because that's where this is going. It really is, yes, it seems innocent, but it's largely not. You want to go for it?
What's innocent?
The storytelling. It could seem like an innocent thing that all the world's a stage and we are but players upon it. Sounds kind of fun, but it's not, because oftentimes what the mind's stories do is create conflict and tension, and then actions based on very little, if no, facts. They have real consequences and cause real suffering. But we're getting ahead of ourselves a little.
All right. Quote: "There's a huge amount of suffering that is generated not by the actual challenges of life, but by the fictitious problems that the mind creates." Tole. So when you realize how many philosophies have basically said, life is about suffering, life is suffering, you realize that what you're actually seeing is the fictitious problems that the mind is creating. And it decides that this is a problem. Most people will say, well, what do you mean? Growing old is a problem. Like, it's part of what's going on down here. Whether you accept it or not is moot. It's what goes on down here. No one really asked you to have a good opinion or a bad opinion about it. You have to have your own opinion about it. You're forming an opinion by your experiences. But you're choosing the mindset that you are going to be walking. A friend of mine had just made a comment to me that, I never realized how much my thoughts govern my life on whether or not it's good or bad. And I looked at her like, okay.
That's a beautiful insight.
Yes.
Because that's really the beginning, is self-examination. But may I go back for a second?
Sure.
I mean, what you said is exactly correct. So life happens. Life happens to everybody. The stories, though, which are your likes or dislikes or your opinion, your idea of how it should be versus reality, and the difference between those two, and then you decide that I, meaning the little I, don't like this, and therefore I feel bad about it, and I'm going to make other people feel bad about it, and then they're out to get me, and I don't deserve this, and the whole engine of suffering starts out with this sort of kernel idea that your opinion matters, and that your likes and dislikes should be considered because you're the main character. The other people who talked a lot about this are the Stoics. They're the Marcus Aurelius and crew. They looked at life and said that a large portion of, the difficulty in life is how you feel about it. It's your idea of how life should be versus the reality. And their insight was that if you merely accept reality and say that what is, and I can choose what I feel about it, but I should likely realize to myself that it's just a choice of feeling. And if I want to suffer, I can choose to suffer. And if I want to not suffer, I merely have to choose not to. That insight was brilliant, and it's deep, and there are many people that still sort of espouse the Stoic philosophy. You can find people even to the present day, and it has that exact kernel of truth that you're talking about. Is that your idea of what should happen, and then your dislike of what is happening, and your then desire to be anywhere else but here, and to do something completely different, and to blame somebody for your troubles, and say that, if this was only this and this was only that, I wouldn't be feeling so bad. All that suffering is bound up in the denial reality, really.
It's, how do I say? Most suffering, as we call it, occurs when things that we expect to happen don't happen.
Mm.
And it upsets all the preconceived notions that you may have had when you're expecting a certain outcome. You've considered it over and over again is the logical way, and this should be the logical progression, or just simply, I really want this to happen, logic or no logic, because I feel that this is what is the right way. And that's always, there's a loaded phrase, the right way. And that opens a whole door on what is your definition of the right way.
Oh, yes.
So, for most people, the right way is things are supposed to turn out the way I expect them to.
The way I say they should be. The right way is my way.
Right.
And you know where bad ideas come from? Other people.
So when you understand that that is a human tendency that we all have. Well, it was my idea. Isn't that the best way to roll with this? Mm. And the more diligent of us will say, well, I've taken it all apart and I've looked at it from various angles, turned it around many times, and according to my analysis, this is what's supposed to happen. And not making space for the fact that you really can't see everything. And that admittance, to admit to yourself that you may not know it all.
Ooh. The ego hates that.
You may not know.
To be wrong.
That is something that most people run away from the situation screaming.
Mm.
You mean I don't know? Well, then I can't make a decision then if I don't know. Well, I can't be put in this position. I got to find somebody else who's got more knowledge and have them make my decision. You know, and you just sit there and you go, it's your fear that's making you run.
Mm.
It seems logical, but this is still your life. And you're going to have to be responsible for your life path. Or if you're helping someone else make a decision, like if it's a child, you're helping them make a decision for their life path. It's not about whether you've got every single piece of information available. There are many, many things that even the experts don't know. And you have to be careful of that feeling that arises when someone's talking to you, and it could be an expert, but they're couching it in a term that basically guides you in the way they want you to go, as opposed to, well, what is the truth? And that's an interesting part, because when you touch into the truth, and I mean literally, it's not they call it a personal truth. There's a name for it. There is such a thing as truth. Things happen whether you understand them or not. And when someone speaks truth to you, there's a resonance that goes on inside of you. You just sit there and you go, no, statement's true. And nothing can change it. Whether you like it or not.
Well, I think there's something profound there. We should explore it for a moment. Because here, what we're talking about here is suffering that is generated by the actual challenges of life, which is truth, in essence, the actual reality that is happening, the objective reality, not the subjective truth, let's say, or my truth. But yet, rather than accept the current moment of now, accept objective reality, and then, as the Stoics would say, then you can decide how you feel about it, but realize that reality doesn't change whether you like it or not, and so you might as well not suffer about it. Yet, the fictitious problems that the mind creates are much more along the lines of what you were just saying, that rather than deal with reality, the mind would rather deal with a story, with the this is not how I wanted it to be, this is not how it should be, this is not what the outcome that I'm looking for, so therefore it's someone else's fault, therefore I have to find someone to fix it, therefore I can't make a decision, I can't admit that I don't know everything, so it's not my fault, this one didn't tell me, and this one hid it from me, and they're all out to get me. Now this maelstrom of suffering based on, not on reality, but on expectations and on fantasies and on egoic constructions, is not only doomed to magnify suffering and doomed to really create suffering, but it also doesn't deal with the problem, with the actual reality, the actual thing that's happening. You're substituting your ability to what we've talked about in the past. When reality happens, you have that moment of three things that you can do. You can, number one, first of all, be there, be present, accept that this is happening, and this is very difficult for most people, but this really is happening. There's no judgment. There's no, I don't like it, I didn't want it. And then you get to do the third thing, which is you get to decide what you'd like to do about it. Maybe nothing. Maybe I just have to accept it. Maybe I'll try to do this. But don't do the fourth thing, which is what people do in egoic terms, is they do it with expectations of controlling the outcome. I'll say, well, if I do this, then this won't happen anymore, and I'll have fixed the problem, and everyone, the world will acclaim me as the greatest person ever to fix this problem. And when that doesn't happen, you have huge amounts of suffering and huge amounts of disconnect from reality. But if instead you, in extremis, when you learn these things, which is sometimes in the worst possible circumstances, when you learn these things, and you say, well, there's nothing I can do, but I yet have one more thing I can do. I can at least decide how I will feel about it. There's no way I can control the outcome, so I just have to accept that where I am right now is where I have to be and live. Those are very difficult things. Those are ego-destroying things. They feel like you're getting obliterated. But yet if you get past that via the Stoics or via Tolle, you find that that's the pathway outside of this fictional suffering. Because you suffer, what is it, the old saying, the coward dies 1,000 deaths, that one?
The hero only one.
The hero only one.
Yes. When you realize that you can have the experience of having all those little deaths, and is that what you really want? Because it's painful. And most of us run from that. You don't want to feel that pain. Not where you want to be. But at the same time, where are you in your experience? Is it time for you to deal with death? I mean, what we were talking about before was there are truths, absolute truths, and death is one of them. If you're trapped down here, that's part of the cycle. And maybe eventually we'll get to a point where we won't be participating in this cycle any longer. Death will be overcome. But that's a form of heaven, which is not where we are right now.
Yeah.
So managing this world, managing your experience, understanding that suffering and conflict is a given down here. What I'm not saying is you're supposed to run out there and find the worst situation that you can be in so you can suffer. No. But you are to live your life accordingly. And with every conflict, every issue that comes up, and you reach past yourself into something far greater. Because when you are in that area of truth where things happen, things cannot be changed by you, there's a peace that happens over you. And you have to let that go, that tension go, when you see that you're actually holding truth in your hand. I'm not saying it's easy. And yeah, sometimes it's painful. But there is a peace. And you have to put your faith in the eternal part that you wind up touching when you hold truth to you. There is a continuance of your life force that you don't understand. Can you accept that? Because if you can't accept that, then you will be in perpetual suffering.
Well, let me codify that a little bit, because it's exactly right. So the Tolle gives us the two sides here. There's the suffering that's generated by the actual challenges of life. And then there's the suffering generated by the fictitious problems that the mind creates. And one might say, well, I'd rather have the fictitious problems because, but no. The actual dealing with the actual reality in awareness is in a stillness point. What's the best way to put it is that if you divorce yourself from outcomes and live in the now and accept that this is what is happening, you'll find something what would seem counterintuitive. There's not any suffering involved with it, or rather there's not any magnification of suffering. It just is what is right now. Every part of your life, every moment of now in your life is exactly where you're supposed to be, doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. There isn't the fictitious, imagined, magnified, I don't like this, I don't want this, I want to be anywhere else but here. If only I could change my life, only if I wasn't this person, only if this one had fixed it and that one had fixed it, this one wasn't out to get me. These stories, these fantasies, these imagined outcomes are the thousand deaths. They're the cowardly, the coward's way. The hero may die. In fact, the hero often dies. The hero puts himself or herself in an impossible situation, or rather, sometimes they're just put into an impossible situation. They have a choice. What makes them the hero in an actual heroic story is they choose to accept where they are and do their absolute best and try to overcome, perhaps, without any expectation. The best heroes, they went into it knowing that there was no way they could control the outcome, but they're going to do their best anyway. And then maybe they die. Then they have completely fulfilled their life experience on Earth in the moment of now to the best and highest of their ability. And you say, this this was this cycle. But the coward, the one that avoids all suffering, and tries to change every circumstance and won't accept any responsibility, it's always somebody else's fault. That suffering is never ending because you have no peace. There's no moment in that existence that's not fraught with suffering. Every waking instant is fantasizing, is regretting about the past, or fantasizing future ills, or worrying about who's out to get you, or what's going to happen. It's 1,000 times worse to be, ensnared and trammeled by these fictitious problems, by these stories, rather than to say, yes, it's me. It's me now. If it's you, it's you. And you're the hero suddenly. And that's a terrible thing. But if you accept that now my life is taking a heroic turn, and I have one choice, and the choice is I have to accept the moment of now and live it. And suffering drops away because you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. You're living your life for that moment. And everything around you will be what it is, but it's not you. Your life is the one that you're living. And there isn't really suffering there. There's purpose. There's meaning there. But it's not this fantasy suffering.
Well, I think when you're going through life, you will have opportunities. And they're not necessarily all these dramatic, life-changing kind of conflicts. But if you understand that every opportunity that is presented to you gives you a moment where you can choose to be either the villain or the hero. Do you choose to be heroic here, or do you choose to be the aggressor, the villain, the bad one? The good one and the bad one. But being a hero is much more than the word. It's a mindset. All right. You're making this decision from a hero mindset or a villain mindset. And I think it gets personified a lot with a lot of the video games that the kids are playing.
True.
You get to choose your avatar and which way to do it, and it's an experiment in being a hero or a villain in that regard. But when you apply that to your life in your body right now, to realize the viewpoint that you are looking at the situation through and how you are making your choice, your decision in that moment. If you've gone through any of that, you realize that you'd rather be the hero than the villain. It's an uplifting feeling. And what are the stories that these kids always have on these games? They're trying to take on a character that's sort of black and white, both black and white. They say they're gray, whatever. But they feel uplifted when they wind up being heroic in the moment. And you have to understand yourself internally that your soul, your very nature, wants to help and uplift in some way, some shape, some form. And admitting that to yourself. Now, those that are dominated by the pain body, the pains that they are carrying with them, the little demons that are in the back that are saying, well, we need to get fed now, so you have to be in conflict with someone so we can be fed. Those, if you realize that they are there, you can choose to handle them. but you have to choose to handle them. Because you're realizing at that point that it's not your free will that's making it, it's the emotion that they're trying to trigger, the hatred or the jealousy or the depression even. When the ping body comes up, it's like, yeah, I need to get fed. Let's get depressed about all these things. Nobody likes me. Everybody hates me. I'm going to eat worms. It's one of those where you actually decide that you're going to feed this, going to indulge in this.
Well, those are the fantasies, right? Those are the fictitious problems.
And to realize that it's there, you only have half a second to realize that choice is there, and you do not want to go down that well-worn path where I'm going to worry about something, I'm going to get depressed about my life, it's not going the way I want it to. You make your decision that you are more than this projection, this shadow that you're seeing in front of you.
Well, I mean, it's also easy to say because you have to kind of walk back and say, and I think you mentioned the video games, and I think it's a fair point that they are games, but there's an element of practical knowledge you can take from them. There you are seeing some sort of an archetype of yourself in this game. The thing I would say that would detract from actual practices is there's a lot of respawning and a lot of not so much risk involved, if you will. But if you would say that this would be the mythos, if you kind of put it in Campbell's terms, right, in Joseph Campbell's terms, is that these are practical stories that teach, the heroic response. And we're lacking a lot of that in the modern age. We're lacking a lot of our earlier mythos, if you will. So the heroes of story and of myth oftentimes show this exact behavior that here they are living their happy life, whatever. Some tremendously life-changing event occurs, and the hero has the decision at that exact moment in time. So if we all know the stories and we love them, and if you see yourself in this heroic mindset, it may aid you to say, well, this is my challenge. This is your circumstance. You just mentioned this, that you have to see this as a moment to step up, to accept that it's your turn now to do something that matters. So what is this in practical terms, though? It's much less obvious. You get these opportunities all throughout your life, and people say, well, I'm waiting for the big one. I'm waiting for somebody to put up big red flashing signs, time to be a hero. No, they're small and they're subtle, but you know when they're coming. You have an internal guide, which call it the voice of the heart, if you will, that lets you know that this is a moment when you have a decision to make. And if you listen to the fictitious problems and the stories, and Margaret mentioned being, assuming the role of the villain, if you will, or just allowing expectations and the control of outcomes and the idea that somehow I have to like it or dislike it. If you go down that path, you're becoming the NPC in the game. You're going off and being whatever, this devil, this demon, this whomever. The heroic path is oftentimes the difficult one. And if you're truly in exigent circumstances, if you're, some of these kids we would see in the cancer wards, they had to be heroes in real life, IRL, as they say, the kids. In real life, you're given an exigent circumstance, and you don't get to control the outcomes. You don't get to control whether you like it or not. You don't get to control anything. accept two things, really. The acceptance of where you are and what you'll do next. And that's the decision of the hero. I'm going to persevere. I'm going to try anyway.
Yes. I personally call that the preparation of your spirit. Because when you renew your thinking in that moment of decision, I choose to be a hero in this strife.
Great line.
It changes your perspective completely, because you realize that a hero is not just fighting for oneself, but fighting for the overall good that life is. You're fighting for life. And the depth that is around you, flow of life, it's valuable. People, the villains always degrade life. Oh, that's just not worth it. It's not worth doing that. Oh, life is good. And fighting as a hero, you affirm, life is good, even though my circumstances suck.
Right.
Life is good. And that's the renewing of the mind, realizing the goodness that embracing it, fighting for it, not giving up. And when you do that, you realize that what has happened to you in the past has no weight anymore.
Doesn't matter.
You are not the events that have happened to you in the past. You are so much more, because you fight for life. That is valuable, no matter what is going on. At that point, you see yourself as a figure that upholds life. And that's a sacred position to be in, a sacred calling, to be one who upholds life. Worth everything that you are or have. In fact, we've spoken at depth for this, where people will run and try to save strangers who are in a life-threatening situation, to put their own lives in danger just to try to save this person. That is the sacredness that life is. The recognition. It's primal. And if you don't recognize that, stop for a moment and release these preconceived notions of how you think life should be. Discover what life actually is. Truly amazing.
Well, the interesting thing about that, you mentioned when people will, in essence, sacrifice themselves or put themselves in grave danger of losing their own life for the other, is what has happened in that moment. And this is very, very interesting in one regard, is they've chosen a heroic path. And we even say to these people, what an incredibly heroic thing to do, to try and save this person, maybe even lose your life in the course of doing it. But they always say that I couldn't have lived with myself if I had let them go, if I didn't try. So it's an instantaneous decision of outward. You aren't facing inward. When you're facing inward and considering only yourself, if that's the fictitious problems, that's telling yourself all the story. The hero turns that around. They face outward. They see themselves in the other. So you're really linking up with that which connects all of us, this emanation of source. That's also the heroic impulse, is that you're connecting up with source. You're no longer, you're as Margaret just said, you are choosing the path of life. You're defending life, and in that regard, you're affirming that all of us here have that connection, a human connection. And there's one thing that all these heroes say almost to a person. They literally say, I didn't do anything special. Anyone would have done it. Well, that's not true, but it is true at a deeper level. If you choose the heroic path, it has nothing to do with your circumstance. It has everything to do with your choice. And in choosing that, there's no suffering anymore. You did it because why? It had to be done. And the fact that a hero loses their life in the heroic act, which is completely selfless already, it's like the Bushido. The Bushido is the way, which is the code of the samurai. But one of the most important things of the Bushido is that you live life as though you were already dead. Well, that sounds weird, right? But what it really means is that you live your life without consideration of the little you, of the egoic you, of the self, of the what will happen to me, the thousand deaths, the coward. You live your life as a selfless hero without any regard for whether or not your individual spark will terminate in the next instant. Because in this instant, you're acting in full power and full awareness, doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing, and that's the heroic act. It's a timeless act, an affirmation, an affirmative act that stands alone, regardless of the outcome.
Well, I'd like to go back to the fact that when you do interview these people that have thrown themselves into the situation to try to save another's life, they always say, "I'm not a hero."
Exactly.
Okay. And it has to do with the definition of hero that everybody accepts. They're extraordinary. They
1 in a million.
They basically have put themselves in harm's way to try to save someone, and they're acting as if it's the ego that has decided that I'm going to be a hero right now.
Look at me. No.
In the actual moment, you are touching into your intrinsic being of life. Mm-hmm. That life force, that breath of life that God breathed into you. Suddenly you see another breath of life that's about to be extinguished in this world. And everything inside of you says, no. If I can help in any way, you just go there. It's like, no, I'm going to they're trying to snuff out this life. No, I will light it with my own flame. Mm-hmm. And in that moment, you transcend everything you think you are and everything other people think you are. You just are. Mm-hmm. And that fire of being blazes, and you will do everything you can to save that flame from being extinguished. It is the most, in words, it is the most noble,
selfless.
It's an expression of your soul. The absolute expression of your soul and life and love. That's why, the image of Jesus on the cross, dying for another. There is no greater love that man has than offering his life for a friend.
Right, lay down your life for a friend, right?
Yes. That's what they're talking about. That fire, that flame. To understand, that's who you actually are. Not everything else everybody says. That's who you are. And that's what you're searching to touch back into. Because in that moment, how many people have said, I was made for this moment.
Exactly.
I was made to be here in this place, in this space, this time, to reach a hand out and save this flame light.
When you're acting in that moment, it's exactly like that. You're doing, your actions seem predestined, foreordained, but they're not. They're just exactly right. They're absolute, and they're completely selfless. There's no consideration of what may happen.
No, that has nothing to do with it because you are in the eternal moment at that point.
Exactly.
And
that's what they say. You said the interview. They interview. Well, anyone would have done it. I'm not a hero. Well, we know you are, and you know you are, but it doesn't matter. If you know what I mean. It wasn't part of the consideration.
It has nothing to do with what you think.
Exactly.
Or any projection someone else wants to make. They'll take that and people will spin a story around it. Instead of acknowledging that life calls to life and there was an answer. So,
to come back to it, and it really, that phrase that really should ring true is that the hero dies but one death, or the hero does not have any tie to these fictitious problems. You're not thinking about being a hero.
I think the thing to really understand is that you must choose to live moment by moment. And when you choose to live, you are holding that flame that was given to you. And you will meet others who also hold that flame. Your whole life will reach that new frequency.
Right.
And we have reached the end of our hour.
We have.
So I'm Margaret.
And I'm Michael.
And thank you for being here.